Hey there, I'm Sierra Bailey with Doers Shakers Makers, and today I'm going to explain 3 ways to optimize your energy. I will say, if you'd like the classic ways to get more energy, to check out my podcast. That is on the Doers Shakers Makers podcast on how to get more energy. But the point of this video is to talk about how to optimize what energy you naturally have. All right, so what exactly do I mean by this? What I mean is that we as people have certain times of day where we're doing things better. And in our work, we do certain tasks at certain times of day. So ideally, to match these up would be optimizing your energy. Let's go into a little bit of detail. So what are the things that you're doing in a day? Well, in my own personal life, I have felt that in both of really my companies that I've owned, I can break down what I do into thinking, problem solving, communicating, and active output. Some of these you may think, oh, that's obvious. Email is communicating. Well, for me, communicating is more of when I'm actually talking to another person. I think of emailing as more of the problem solving actually, because usually there is a point to the email that I'm making. So when I'm trying to think of what to write to somebody, I'm actually solving a problem. I think of thinking as reading, as journaling, as perhaps planning out my future of things, so that could be way more problem solving. Like I said, it depends on what you feel your areas are. I like to keep them to the fore. For me, it just works well. Problem solving does end up being more of my planning, big picture things. It ends up being things like emailing. It ends up creating things like new courses to do or things like that. The thinking may be the daydreaming part, the coming up with the idea, but the problem solving is how I'm going to implement it, how I'm going to actually create it and do it. Then we come to the communicating, which I touched on. That would be things from networking to talking with clients and having one-on-one sessions with them to even having workshops. The active output, a little bit of the crossover with the workshop, because especially these days with things on Zoom, I feel like I'm on. Creating these videos, active output. Creating podcasts, active output. So it's more than communicating, because usually I'm talking to somebody, not back and forth. That's why the workshops cross over, because I'm actually talking to people. I'm having that back and forth. When I'm doing something like a podcast, creating a video, creating a course, things that just require me actively putting an output, it takes a lot out of me. So there are definitely differentials between that and communicating, although I am an introvert, so both of those take things out of me. But if you are an extrovert and you're getting energy from talking to people and being around people, communicating would be a much different feeling of work than active output would be to you. So that's the first step. You need to assign what the areas of your work are. You do not need to get super specific, because when you're feeling like you have great energy and you're doing things that really flow for you and work well, it's not super specific. You're not saying like, oh, this is the perfect time for me to do my podcast, because if you have a podcast, you're probably not recording every day. And during that same time slot every day, there is a variety of activities that you feel very great when you're doing them during that time. So the next step is, when do you do the things well? Now, this could be, you may know already, this could be as simple as looking at your schedule and seeing if you do have full control of your schedule, where you're naturally starting to put things. Because often we will gravitate to putting the things when they feel good to be doing them, when we want to do them, or even not necessarily when we schedule them, but when we actually do them. So for example, I used to having recording my podcast very early in the morning. I am not an active output person very early in the morning, nor am I a communicator. I'm great at thinking. I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of journaling. It's like my quiet activity time. I then get a little bit better with communicating as the morning progresses. I need a solid 2 hours first, but then I want to do my networking. I love networking in the morning. I am horrible at networking at night, and I avoid it at all costs because I'm not getting much out of it. I'm not a good networker at night. I'm also not a great communicator at night. I am a very good problem solver at night. So you start to notice the patterns in yourself. I go more into this in that podcast episode, but I want you to, for a week, start to write down when you are really getting into the groove with different categories of work, when you're really feeling that you are doing really well with it. And then the most important step is our third step. And that is to try and match up the task that you do well with the time that you do it well as often as possible. Now, this sounds obvious and you're like, duh. But in reality, if you look at your schedule and where you're trying to fit yourself into time-wise, it probably does not line up as much as you think it does. You may start moving things yourself so that it falls naturally that way, but you'll start to notice that when you are forcing yourself to do something, for example, me networking at night, that it just feels horrible. You don't enjoy it, which is so weird because I love going to a coffee and meeting fantastic people in business in the morning. And yet if I did the same thing over dinner, I would dread it. I would want to get out of there as fast as possible. I wouldn't want to talk to people because my communication just does not feel that great at that time. Also, another example, emails. I think of that as problem solving. In the morning, it will take me, I will put off writing an email all day long. But at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if I look at my list and say, oh, I didn't email these people, my goodness, the words fly from my fingers onto that keyboard and I have immediately come up with the exact thing that I want to say and feel like it's well articulated, send it off without another thought, and it's gone. I start second guessing myself in the morning if I'm doing emails and all of these things. So by paying attention to those natural patterns of your own energy and when you work best and when you feel things the best and matching that up with the tasks that you have to do with your day as much as possible. Sometimes you don't have control over all of your schedule, but try to move things around as much as you can. And it will make it so that the energy that you do have is optimized and you are getting the best output of what you have. I hope this inspired you to take a little bit of a look at your schedule, make some tweaks, and start paying attention to when you're doing things because it can really be a big change for your schedule and for your mental state and absolutely for your energy. Again, check out that podcast episode, How to Get More Energy, if you want to dive a little bit more into how to build more energy. And of course, I will be back next week with another Tuesday tip. I am Sierra Bailey. This is Doers Shakers Makers, and thank you for watching.